tonight's debate. You'll hear more about this in a moment from our chairman. I want to say thank you to the town of Andover, and particularly to the town manager. I'd like to introduce the town manager who will give you formal greetings of the town. Mr. Manager.
First, I want to thank Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce for selecting this venue. On behalf of the Board of Selectmen, the school committee, the school superintendent, we welcome you to the beautiful north end of the high school. There's no doubt we wouldn't have any sense back in the 1640s when Reverend John Woodbridge purchased the land that would become North Andover for £6 sterling, that would become the community we are today. But I have no doubt that he would take great pride in the energy and commitment to community that exists in the town of North Andover. From its beautiful tree-lined neighborhoods where kids can play without concerns of crime, to the startup businesses that bring great technology to the country and to the world, like the Aurora Imaging Technologies of North Andover and Nexam. We're a beautiful community to live and to work. But there's no question if you walk around North Andover that the passion we have for education and for community sports is rivaled by only one thing: the passion for politics in North Andover. And you can walk in every street corner, in every Dunkin' Donuts and other coffee shop, and in every venue and hear a political debate. So during this very important time, when there's a lot of discussions happening, both regionally and nationally, it makes perfect sense that the debate tonight, which has reached national prominence in the race for Congress here in the Merrimack Valley and Essex County, should take place here at North Andover High School. So I wish the candidates luck this evening, and I hope that as a result of the debate and discussion that take place tonight, all of us will feel more equipped to make our decisions on November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. And for those that wrote questions, the manager has drawn 2 questions, and hopefully we'll be able to ask both of those later on today. They're in the envelope or here in the moderator's table. Let me introduce our moderator. We have asked the chairman of the board of directors of the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce to be our moderator. Let me tell you who he is. Salvatore Napoli is a serial entrepreneur, having built several successful businesses with over 650 employees, to include the Sal's Pizza you all know and love, in the wholesale retail division, the Salvatore's restaurants and River Rock properties. He has raised over $250 million in capital through his various business interests. Mr. Napoli is an economic development visionary that helped create over 3,500 jobs and recruit over 200 companies in one of the poorest communities in the United States, Lawrence, Mass., which is the home of River Rock Properties, which consists of 2.4 million square feet. He has his BS in business management with honors from Northeastern University and an MBA at MIT. He's known for his commitment to the community. He is a coach and recognizes his contributions to both youth and veteran organizations. Please allow me to introduce our moderator. Give him a great round of applause. Our chairman of the board, Mr. Salvatore.
Welcome to the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce debate series. I'm Sal Napoli of Napoli Companies and chairman of the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce. Tonight we will have a debate between Democratic Congressman John Tierney and challengers Republican candidate Richard Tisei and Libertarian candidate Dan Fishman. The Chamber deals with many issues and has formulated the following questions based on what we have heard from our members over the last year. The format for tonight's Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce debate will be as follows. Each candidate will have a 2-minute opening statement. Then the candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question and 1 minute to follow up or respond to a question if they choose. At the end of tonight's debate, Town Manager Andy Mailer will draw 1 to 2 written questions from the audience. The last remaining 5 minutes will be dedicated to the candidates' closing statements. The candidates also drew numbers to determine which the order they will deliver their 1-minute closing statement. No, the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce does not endorse or take any stand for or against any candidate, but believes it is important to hear their views, and thus we host tonight's debate as a public service.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you, Sal, and I'd like to thank the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce for hosting this debate tonight. I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce myself in Wakefield, and I work in real estate. past few years, I really do feel as though I've been on the front lines and seen firsthand the struggles that families are going through all across this district. I've sat at a lot of kitchen tables over the past few years, and I've seen the pain in people's faces when they tell me that they don't want to move, or they don't want to sell their home, but they have to because they've lost their jobs or they're underemployed. I've also sat with a lot of seniors. I've had to tell them that their home, which is their biggest retirement account, is only worth a third less than they thought because of depreciation that's taking place. And I can almost see the wheels turning and the anguish on their face when they're recognizing that their retirements aren't going to be anything like what they thought. You know, our country is in a lot of trouble right now, and a lot of people are hurting. Take a look around. 23 million people who are unemployed or underemployed, 1 in 7 people who are on food stamps, 50% of young people graduating from college who can't find jobs. A child being born today will already be responsible for $60,000 in government-issued debt before they even take their first steps. What kind of a start in life is that? Now, I'm running for Congress because I believe we are a great country, and our problems aren't insurmountable. We can solve our problems. But in order to do that, the first thing we have to do is we have to stop all the name calling. We have to put an end to the dysfunction and the gridlock in Washington that's undermining our country. During the time I was a state senator, we had 3 major fiscal emergencies here in Massachusetts, and we made it through each one. The reason why we were able to solve our problems was because everybody came together, both Democrats and Republicans, and did what was in the best interest of the people of this state. I was proud to be a part of those efforts, and those experiences taught me that if you want to get things done, you have to be willing to put partisanship aside, realize you can't always have it your way, and be able to work with others. We have to put this country back on track, and that's why this race is so important. It gives us a chance right here in the 6th Congressional District to help bring real change to Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Kennedy.
So one of the things that I'm hoping to convince you of tonight is that things actually can change. If you think about what we represent up here, we represent people who want to represent the district. And if we want to represent the district, that means that we want to represent you. I have not been a politician for the last 15, 20 odd years. I've had a regular job, worked different places around town. And at this point in time, I've seen politics as usual for the last 20 years. I've seen the way things have changed. And as far as I can tell, they really haven't. We have been on a cycle of spend, spend, spend. The idea of a balanced budget amendment doesn't make sense because we have a balanced budget in our grasp already. We have the idea that we shouldn't spend more than we have. Everybody understands it at their core level. We have the idea that in our Constitution that the country is allowed to accumulate debt in cases of emergency. If there were a war, we're allowed to borrow money. If there were a disaster, we're allowed to borrow money. But what's happening now is that every budget we are spending more than we have, and we have to keep increasing the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling is going to be increased again, probably in the next 3 months. That is taking money out of your pocket. That is giving a promise for you to pay back money with interest. At this point in time, we are looking at $430 billion a year paid in interest on the debt. If we keep spending the way we are, we're never going to balance the budget. We're never going to be able to afford the things that we really need. All we're doing is making a lot more money for financial services industries that are funding this crazy spending thing. We need to find a way to live within our means. We need to find a way to say our budget must be something that we stick to. We need to find a way to say that the money that we accumulate is for important things. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sal, for moderating tonight. Thank the Chamber and Joe Bevilacqua for providing us this forum, Andy Mailer for introducing us as well, and the people at the high school here for making the facility available. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be in this part of the district as well. I think most people may know that we planned a debate up in this area. Mr. Fishman and I had agreed on a similar debate that was going to be moderated by the League of Women Voters, and they're one of the oldest and most respected nonpartisan organizations in the country. My opponent, Mr. Tisei, however, refused. I found that somewhat concerning on that, but I think that we should be addressing issues that everyone would be concerned with, family issues as well as women's issues, and I think that that's important on that. This economy has been in trouble since 2001 and moving onward, and we have to keep our path out of recession and moving forward. This is an election about choices. And on one side, we have Mr. Tisei, who stands for one set of values. And I think the troubling part about that is Mr. Tisei speaks about being nonpartisan, but aligns himself with a Republican majority in Congress who's been probably the most partisan group in the last 60 years. They are extremely ideological by the accounts of moderates and people in the conservative side as well. And he says he's comfortable with that Republican Party and with their agenda. He's accepted over $3 million from the Tea Party, the so-called Young Guns as well, who pride themselves on being uncompromising and sort of playing take-no-prisoners politics. And he said he supports the current Republican majority in Congress. It's the same majority that wants to restrict birth control and defund Planned Parenthood, that says the Tea Party is a godsend and that the Ryan budget is a good starting point. I'm opposite of that. I have different values and priorities. I support President Obama. I believe in fighting for the middle class to get a fair shake. I voted for 17 different tax cuts for small businesses, a payroll tax cut for the middle class instead of more tax cuts for millionaires. I fought to protect Medicare because I believe that seniors deserve dignity in retirement, and I've passed laws to expand training for green jobs, to hold insurance companies accountable by giving you a refund if they spend too much on overhead, and to keep student loan rates down. This is about choice. I hope to convince you the right choice is me in November. Thank you.
Question 1, to candidate Tisei. The high cost of energy has made a big impact on businesses and households during these tough economic times. What will you do as our congressman to curb the rising cost of fuel, sir?
Well, I definitely agree. One of the reasons why families all throughout this district are having such a tough time, not only is the economy difficult and the cost of food and everything else going up, but the cost of energy is going up. And just over the last 4 years, the cost of gasoline is going up. And not only does it impact families, it also impacts just about every type of business in this district. When I got my tires fixed not too long ago, I went in, I asked the owner of the tire company how things were going, and he said, you know what, we really don't do that well when the cost of gas is high. I think that as Americans, we have to become energy independent, and I think that we have to look at every single option that we have as far as having a whole bunch of different fuel sources. And I do think that exploring for more natural gas and oil here in America is an important thing to do. I think that it's very important. I voted for the Green Communities Act when I was a member of the legislature. Because I think renewable energy is really important, wind and solar. And I think that we have to have a mix of as many different types of energy as we can, especially here in New England, where we've become so we are so energy dependent. We don't have our own natural resources here. I also would vote in favor of the Keystone Pipeline. I think it's crazy that there are all these resources in Canada and they're going to have to build a pipeline to the other part of Canada to ship it all to China. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So I will vote as a member of Congress for any bill that really helps promote energy development, energy exploration here in the United States.
Thank you. Candidate Fishman.
This is a great question that illustrates the difference between us. Because if you ask me what should government be doing about the high cost of energy, I will tell you that government should not be interfering in energy costs. Government should not be subsidizing oil companies. Right now, we're seeing a direct result of what's happened from the government subsidizing fossil fuel energy companies for the last 30 years. China is crushing us in solar technology. And the reason why is that when we could have been researching solar technology, and let's face it, we have the technology here, we could be at the forefront of this industry. We did not, because of government's well-intentioned intervention to keep gas prices lower than they actually were. Anybody who's got relatives that live anywhere else in the world know that we have been paying a lot less for gasoline because we have been subsidizing it with our tax monies by giving tax breaks, enormous tax breaks, billions of dollars to oil companies. We have been playing favorites. And what they're proposing to do in the Obama administration is playing favorites, but with a different bunch. We can level the field and say, everybody compete at your own merit level, and we can see what American technology can do. We can see how we can improve our energy market. We can see what would happen in an actual fair market. There are a lot of results out there that are not being explored right now. I'll give you another example where government intervention has dramatically hurt us in the energy market. When it came time to start building nuclear power plants in the United States, there are two basic fuels that you can use. One is thorium and one is plutonium. Plutonium, of course, when it's refined, makes nuclear weapons, and it's a great benefit to the military industry. Thorium, when it's refined, when it overheats, the byproduct is sand. It's not dangerous. You can carry thorium around in your pocket. We had government choose for us and say, you know what? We're going to use radioactive material that is dangerous because we want the byproducts for our weapons industry. If government hadn't intervened, we would have two types of nuclear power right now. Government intervention always has unintended consequences.
Congressman Tierney?
Thank you very much. I think there are a number of things that we have been doing and should continue to doing, but not the least is looking into price gouging right now. It's sort of amazing when I talk to people, they always watch the pump, and the price is going up at the pump, yet they know the cost of a barrel of oil has been going down. So people are starting to wonder, how is it that it always goes up so fast when the cost of a barrel goes up, and it goes down very slowly when the barrel of oil goes down. And the fact of the matter is we should be following up on that and making sure that dealers and distributors are not gouging the public and make sure that there's an aggressive attack on that. The other is efficiency. When we passed the energy bill in the 2007-2008 on that, the idea was to raise the mileage in automobiles, to make sure that we had more efficiency in all of our energy needs. And the President, of course, has since worked with the automobile industry and others in the field to increase that efficiency going forward. So I think that's going to make a big difference. People will be using far less gas and therefore paying less. But one of the ways you can save 60 cents to $1 per gallon is to get the speculation out of the market. Right now, the Commodities and Future Exchange, 30% of the people that are bidding on the oil actually have an end use for it, and 70% of the people have no use for it at all. They're just bidding, speculating that the price is going to go up or down, in this case up, and then others speculate because it's going up and drive it up further. And that's why in the Dodd-Frank bill, we put a provision in there for the exchange to set a rule that wouldn't allow so many people to be in speculating. If you take the speculators out, the estimates and all the experts that have been testifying in front of us are that it's at least 60 cents per gallon. I think that's a good start. Then diversity. Obviously, we cannot rely just on the fossil fuels that we've been using. We have to be diverse. We have to put investments into greener technology, into new ways to fuel our automobiles in particular. I passed the Green Jobs Act so that we would have people that are skilled and trained to be able to take those jobs and work in them. That's why we work in the Workforce Investment Act for job training as well. And we invest in science and technology so the cutting edge work in this new industry can be done here in Massachusetts in this district, and we can put people to work at good paying jobs.
Thank you. Question 2. One of the top concerns within business community is the cost of health care and the continuing discussion about the health care programs, cost to business. In your opinion, is the National Health Care Program working, and should any changes be made to make health care less expensive? Mr. Candidate Fishman?
One of the things that bothers me most about the Affordable Care Act is that it was started here in Massachusetts. Not because I don't like Massachusetts. I think the plan is right for Massachusetts. I think that we recognize in our state it made sense. But Massachusetts is nothing like Mississippi. What made us think that our plan should be imposed on a state that doesn't want it? There have been 33 votes in the House now, maybe 34, could be one that happened relatively recently, in which the Republicans in the House have said, we don't want the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, we want to repeal it. Those congressmen are not going home and losing elections because they said they want to repeal Obamacare. They're going home and people are saying, thank you for representing us. We have to recognize the fact that the Affordable Care Act is unpopular in other places. A lot of times you'll hear Democrats complain that the Republicans block everything they do. This is the Republican Party that the Democrats have made. This is the Republican Party that is a result of the Democrats using a small majority to push through game-changing legislation. And that's not what our country is about. Our country says that if there are 40% of us who feel one way, we should be represented. We shouldn't have to live the way the other 60% live. We shouldn't have the idea of a tyranny of the majority, where the majority looks and says, this is the way we think everything ought to go. We understood this in the beginning of our country, when we established in the Constitution the idea that for some things, we would need 2/3 votes. For some things, we would need 3/4 votes, if you want to pass an amendment, for example. We understood the idea that a 51% majority is not the way to drive the entire country. And this is my biggest issue with the Affordable Care Act. I think there's a lot of things we can do to make things cheaper. For one thing, we can open up the pharmaceutical markets to foreign companies. We have simple drug tests that we put all manufacturers through. If we all know the rush that when people were buying meds in Canada, it made a big difference. Let's open up and allow pharmaceuticals to be sold in the United States, regardless of where they're made, so long as they pass a quality check.
Thank you. Congressman Tierney?
Thank you very much. You know, I was president of a small chamber of commerce in Salem, Massachusetts for a number of years, on the board for longer than that, had my own company as well. And the thing that we always used to remark about is every time the premiums went up, those of us that had promised our employees health care would always see our income go down possibly, or we work harder and get it up on that basis. But it was getting more and more expensive. It was going up at 18% a year. So that was just something that was going on indefinitely in the future. One of the primary reasons why we all thought it was important to have health care reform in this country and why we passed the Affordable Care Act. You know, it hasn't fully kicked in yet. So a lot of people are complaining about a bill that hasn't even fully taken effect. But one of the things that's going to happen when the exchanges get in is that businesses are going to be able to shop for the best plan on price, and the best plan on quality. If they're a small business and small enough, they're not even going to have to if they don't want to. They'll have the choice to either cover their employees and get a plan, or they'll be able not to. But if they choose not to, at least their employees will be able to get a more affordable plan, which hasn't been happening right now, and their employees will have less days out sick, and they'll be able to be in work on that basis. If they do choose, as a small business, to cover their employees, or if they're large enough to be required to cover them, then they'll get a sliding scale credit, a subsidy on that to make it easier and less expensive for them to do it, and the premiums will come down. All the estimates from all the nonpartisan experts on this is this will drive premiums down and costs down. Every health economist that's looked at this bill indicates that we put into the bill every cost-saving measure except for the public policy as part of the exchange, and that this will do what we can do to drive prices down. We need to do that. 18% a year is a bad tax for small businesses to pay. We needed to get the prices down on energy and on health care to make businesses be able to succeed. And I think we need to make sure that it's implemented in the proper way. And I think my colleague, Mr. Tisei, was right that the Massachusetts bill was a good model for the nation. And that is exactly why it's been taken as a model and moved forward.
Thank you. Candidate Tisei?
Well, thank you. I don't remember saying that the Massachusetts bill would be a good model for the nation. I think quite the opposite. We do have a bill here in place in Massachusetts. I'm proud to have voted for it. We had a very unique situation here in Massachusetts when we put our bill together. We had 92% of the people who were already insured, and our goal was to get to 100%. And we were able to do that here in Massachusetts by going to the federal government, designing a program, going to the federal government, and asking for a special waiver so that we would receive additional money so we could fund more, so we could fund our system. I think every other state should be given that same opportunity. Rather than a one-size-fits-all approach forced upon every state in the country, I think that the proper way to do things would be to allow each state to come forward with their own plan and give them the same special consideration that Massachusetts got. To get a waiver, to get additional money, provide incentives to those, and then look around at all 49 states and decide who's doing a good job, what plans are that you want to replicate in other states. I do want to say, though, that this health care bill is a problem for this country. Number one, the bill that we passed here in Massachusetts was 70 pages long. The bill that passed on the federal level was 2,700 pages. We didn't create hundreds and hundreds of new agencies and departments and bureaucracy. We didn't have a broad-based tax increase here in Massachusetts. In Obamacare alone, there are 21 tax increases, 18 that are set to take effect after the election. The bill here in Massachusetts didn't turn our whole healthcare system upside down. And that's exactly what the federal bill is going to do. It's going to interfere with the doctor-patient relationship. This independent payment advisory board that's been mentioned. Aaron Barney Frank has come out and signed a bill to repeal that board, because it's something that's never been done before. They've been given unprecedented power, and they're going to interfere with the doctor-patient relationship. Already, the federal bill has been estimated to cost twice as much as what was originally told to the American public when it was passed. And I would just say that it is going to be a job killer, and that's the most important thing.
Thank you. I'm going to remind the candidates and come back to candidate Fishman. You have a 1-minute rebuttal if you choose. Would you like to?
Yes, please. There's a couple of important things, too, that we can talk about. Getting government out of the way to lower healthcare costs. I talked earlier about the idea of prescription drugs. Another thing that we can recognize is the fact that right now, the American Medical Association controls the number of doctors in the United States. They do this because they have a grant from the federal government to do that. If we were to remove that, if we were to say, you know what, medical schools, there's no cap. You still have to maintain your criteria, you still have to be accredited. But if you want to put 5,000 doctors into the market this year, that's okay with us. Guys in the Chamber of Commerce, you know what happens when competition happens. If we were to put a lot more doctors, a lot more healthcare providers in the market, we could drive down costs immediately. We can do the same thing with other medical professionals who are not doctors. Nurse practitioners right now are being restricted in states because laws are being passed saying nurse practitioners have to work for doctors. We can find a way to change the healthcare industry by changing the number of people who are working in it. We can find a way to make the healthcare industry more competitive. Thank you.
Thank you. Congressman Tierney, 1 minute rebuttal.
Thank you, Sally. We had a plan before the Affordable Care Act when private industry was running amok and they were raising premiums 18% a year. Small businesses were seeing that go up. It was driving them out of business, not allowing them to hire extra people. And that's what happens when you don't do anything. When you just leave it to insurance companies to decide what kind of care they're going to give and not try to make sure that people are covered. We had 30 million people that didn't have any coverage at all. Our emergency rooms were packed fully and disrupting the healthcare process on that side. When children got out of school, if they didn't have a job that had it, they couldn't stay covered on their parents' plan until they were 26. People were being excluded for having a pre-existing condition, and people were being thrown off coverage on an annual limit or a lifetime limit on that. So all of this factors into the fact that we needed to have healthcare reform. We've put it in place. Businesses are going to benefit it. It's going to help drive the cost down. In fact, all of the nonpartisan experts in health say that it's going to drive the cost down on premiums, save businesses expense, and allow us to grow and be more prosperous.
But the point is, here in Massachusetts, we had a lot of law in place that did all of those things without the federal government coming in and imposing things. And I just want to make one point. The congressman says that insurance rates are going to come down. The Pioneer Institute just put out a report this week. Layered in the bill is this called Cadillac tax. And basically what it means is that anybody who pays more than $10,000 a year for an individual plan or a family plan that's $27,000 more will have an excise tax put on their health insurance plans. And the Pioneer Institute came out and estimated that that's going to affect 1 out of every 2 individuals in Massachusetts. They're going to have to end up paying that tax because we are a state that has high premiums. And what that means for middle-class families is this. A police officer on a family plan will end up having to pay an extra $53,000 over a 10-year period. A teacher on an individual plan will end up having to pay an extra $20,000 over a 10-year period. So rather than bring, and I think most people understand when the federal government gets involved, rates are going to go up, they're not going to come down.
Thank you. Question number 3, Congressman Tierney. Jobs are at the forefront of almost every American's mind. Either people are looking for a job or they worry about their own jobs. And will they survive the long-term recession? What are you going to do specifically to help create jobs in the 6th District?
Well, Sal, I'm glad you asked that. We've been doing things for the last 31 months that have created private sector jobs every month in the last 31 months because we were making investments in this district and in this state and in the country. And that was putting people to work. We helped our cities and towns so that they didn't have to lay off teachers and firefighters and police. And then we also made sure that we made investments in core strategic items that needed to be done. Roads and bridges and water facilities, expanding broadband, making sure our electrical transmission lines were brought up. All of those things have to be done anyway, and we are far behind the investments that are needed just to keep our businesses competitive and keep our life in the quality that we want it to be. As we made those investments, we moved out of the recession. During 2001 to 2008, with George Bush and the policies that my opponent and Mr. Romney would bring us back to, tax cuts for the wealthy, and wait around and see if something happens. Well, what we saw happen in that 2000 period was we lost millions and millions of jobs. We were losing 700,000 jobs a month when President Obama was sworn in, and we've been working out of that ever since. We had trillions of dollars in equity in our homes going down and lost savings. We had people in danger of foreclosure in the millions. And so we've been working our way out of that by investing in America like we did in the 90s when Bill Clinton was there and we had 23 million jobs created. And now we're doing that, and we need to keep doing that. We need to pass the President's Jobs Act, which will put people back in the private sector, building roads and bridges and information technology, and transmission lines, and health clinics, and schools. And then we need to make sure that as those have in the private sector, we help our cities and towns so that they can have a full complement of teachers as the school-age children go, and it's not shrinking, and our fire and police stations are full as well. Then our small businesses have what they need most, and that's customers. People to make sure they go out and shop and buy things because they're living, they're earning a wage, they can support their families and their community.
Everything that the congressman just mentioned is the government spending more money. We're $16 trillion in debt. I want to problem in this country, the problem in this district right now is that the small businesses in particular, aren't creating jobs anymore. And in order to live here in this congressional district, or anywhere else in the state, you need good middle-class jobs being created. And, you know, the last 4 years, the average wage of all the jobs created, $13.83 an hour. You can't live, work, and raise a family on that. And, you know, we don't need more government. What we do need is we need tax reform in Washington, we need regulatory reform, and we need predictability. And I've been around all types of businesses. I go to 3 or 4 every week and tour them, and I talk to employees, I talk to business owners. And I'll say to them, you know, are you planning on hiring more people? And they all say the same thing to me. You know what, Richard? Not right now. I'm going to wait and see what happens, because I don't know what's going to happen in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months from today. I have no idea what the tax rates are going to be. The capital gains, the income tax, the dividend tax, the alternative minimum tax, the estate tax. If you're going to die, you better do it before the end of the year, because that expires at the end of this year. There's so much unpredictability out there, and nobody knows what regulation is coming next. Obamacare, 200 to 300 regulations that are going to be implemented over the next 2 years. Nobody knows how those are going to affect them. The whole healthcare industry is frozen right now. Dodd-Frank, 200 to 300 regulations that are going to be implemented over the next few years. The whole financial service sector is frozen right now. The reason our economy isn't jump-starting right now is because of Washington, D.C. If you take all the recessions since the Great Depression, the average length of the recession lasted 10 months. The longest was 16. We're on our 44th month right now of just a stagnant economy. So the way to get the economy going again is to stop the bickering in Washington, get together, put the plan in place, and allow the small business community around this country to create jobs.
The Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson famously said, "My neighbor's 2 dogs have created more shovel-ready jobs in this administration." Government does not create jobs. A job gets created when an entrepreneur sees an opportunity. When a small business owner understands, I think I can take a risk here, I think I can spend the money to hire somebody else, and with our labor combined, we can make more money than we're making right now. The work together that we all do together as employees at the same company will result in more money than just adding one more person's salary. A very specific answer. The very first piece of legislation I will propose when I get to Congress, something I call the first 3 are free. Right now, for a small business to hire 1 employee, the amount of paperwork is the same for Walmart to hire their first employee. There's OSHA, there's minimum wage signs that you have to put up, there's payroll tax, all sorts of requirements and paperwork. We can get those out of the way. Let's say for the first employee that a small business wants to hire, no paperwork. All you have to do is write them a check. They have to handle their own. They are a private contractor now. It makes it easier for the small business to hire an employee. Right now, there are 20 million businesses in the United States that have no employees at all. If even 1/6 of those businesses hired 1 employee, that puts 3 million people back to work right away. That's good for everybody. Putting 3 million people back to work makes a scarcity in the labor market. That drives up wages. We can get government out of the way, and we can put people back to work. Thank you.
Councilman Tierney, 1 minute rebuttal.
Thank you. You know, we need all kinds of jobs. We need clean technology jobs, biotechnology, nanoscience. Those jobs are being created here, in Lowell, in parts of our district, in the 5th district, and down in the Boston area. And those are happening now, 5.1 million jobs in this economy in the private sector. And that's been working. We are still going to spend money as a public. If anybody here contends that they don't want to spend any public money on either side of that, then they should speak out now. Because we've cut $1.2 trillion out of the next 10 years already just out of the spending that usually helps the middle class. The middle class has done its share. We're still going to spend, and my recommendation is you do strategic spending on roads and bridges and water infrastructure and things that we need to do anyway to be competitive, and make sure our classrooms have teachers in them, because we should and still do educate our children, and make sure that a public safety is there with fire and police. With that private sector and public sector jobs, we get customers for our small businesses, we build a stronger America, and that's how we get our economy back on the road. Not tax breaks for millionaires and sitting around waiting. We tried that 2001 and 2008, got nothing.
Thank you.
Well, again, you know, take the medical device industry. In Obamacare, there's a 2.3% excise tax on medical device makers. In this district, we have the largest concentration, one of the largest in the entire country, of companies hiring people, $60,000 to $75,000 jobs on average. That 2.3% excise tax isn't on profits, it's on a company's gross revenue. There's no other tax like it. That's come up for repeal. Elizabeth Warren has come out and said it's a terrible tax, it's going to stifle innovation. Job creators in the North Shore here are already implementing hiring freezes and talking about laying off people. You know, one of the first bills that I'll file as the congressman for this district will be to repeal that medical device tax. It's a terrible tax, it's going to hurt jobs here. And our congressman, whose constituents have the most to lose by that tax being implemented, has been one of the proponents and refused to repeal that tax. And I just think that, you know, part of the reason is he's voting 99% of the time with the leadership in Washington and not putting the people of this district first.
Does anybody not want to spend any federal money? That's me. I don't think it's a good deal when we get taxed, 10% gets taken out in Washington, and it comes back here at 90% for jobs. We talked about spending money for teachers, policemen, and fire department. That works best at a local level because we understand our needs. You guys all pay property taxes. You understand what PTA meetings are. You understand why a PTA works as a local organization because it is responsive to you. We are a country of 300 million people at this point in time. Our government has gotten to the point that it cannot be responsible for what's happening in your local neighborhood. It cannot be responsible for traffic congestion. It cannot be responsible for saying there is not fire coverage in this area. That's something that has to be addressed as a local issue. You know these issues. We know these issues. We have to have a government that represents us. We have to have a government that is responsive to us. A government that rules over 300 million people is not responsive to one person.
I have to remind the audience that your applause during the speech takes time away from the candidates. Please hold your applause till the end. Question number 4. Candidate Tisei, what will you do as congressman to help take control of the national debt?
Well, I think first of all, I would use common sense and have the right priorities when things come up. You know, a lot of people look at the federal government right now and they think that, you know, they think of the government as a big piece of meat and as a big piece of fat that you can cut out. But it doesn't work like that. The fat is marbled all through the meat. And I'll tell you, as I go around this district, I have federal employees who work at all different types of agencies and departments coming up to me and saying, I work at this place. You would not believe all the waste, the way the taxpayers' money is wasted. And I do think that you have to look at the entire federal government and you have to say to yourself, you know, for every dollar the federal government spends right now, they have to go out and borrow 40 cents just for basic operations. And I think you have to have a sense of priorities when things come up and say, you know what, is this worth borrowing 40 cents from China to pay for and burdening our kids and our grandkids with that debt? And it's a huge problem. And I think you have to go through the entire budget. The General Accounting Office went through the budget, just a little section, and what they found was pretty interesting. 82 teacher training programs spread across 10 different agencies. A lot of those were duplicative. 56 financial literacy programs across 20 different agencies. The federal government should not be teaching financial literacy, trust me. 100 different surface transportation agencies. You know, just in the Department of Education alone, 230 overlapping programs within the Department of Education. 180 economic development programs overlapping. I mean, that's what the entire federal government's like. And I do think that, you know, people are very fair. And my oldest sister lives in a group home. She's brain injured. She needs services that are provided by the federal government. I think most people here would say, you know what, if in situations like that, if we don't have the money, yeah, let's go out and borrow it. But from some of this other stuff, I really think that you have to look at it all and pretty much say, you know, make a determination what we can actually afford. The party's over, folks. We don't have the money anymore to keep spending lavishly like they have been in Washington, D.C.
Thank you.
John Dillinger was famously asked why he robbed banks. And he said, because that's where the money is. It shouldn't be shocking to us that there are a million federal programs all using our money to facilitate their own personal agenda. Now, is that agenda sometimes in favor of public? Sure. But we can see lots of examples where the public is getting fleeced. And a great example of that is the Big Dig. You know, the Big Dig benefited us here in Massachusetts substantially, but it cost us more money than anybody thought it would. And the federal government paid for most of that because Massachusetts was powerful in Congress at that time. Senator Kennedy, that was his legacy. He was able to drive through a bill that made the rest of the country pay for our highway project. It's not the way the federal government is supposed to work. The states right now are large and powerful themselves. The states are larger than the original 13 colonies in terms of population. We have a government that can be responsive. We can address debt at a local level, and we're concerned about it at a local level. At a federal level, it has become so abstract that we don't worry about it anymore. More than that, we have a pattern in Congress where Congress delivers the goods back to their district. Congress finds a way to get money to us so that we say, oh, Congress is doing a good job because they got us money. But what's happened recently is that we've become satiated with that. We're no longer content with just getting back 90 cents on the dollar. We're not even content with getting back $1 on the dollar. What's happening now is that Congress is having to find a way to pay us back $1.25 for every dollar they collect in taxes from us. That's got to stop. We have to recognize the fact that we are bankrupt at this point in time. Every person who is born in this year is going to end up with a debt of $16 trillion that's on their head. We're founded with the idea that we can walk away from our debt, but as a country, we have accumulated so much debt that we can no longer walk away from it. The IMF warned about the United States fiscal cliff. They said if we don't address it, there's going to be an end. We have to find a way to address it.
Congressman Tierney.
Thanks, Al. Look, the people that have been most getting fleeced around here have been the middle class. Right? The middle class was fleeced in 2001 and 2003 when the Republicans and George Bush passed tax cuts that were slanted mostly people who were well off. It didn't pay for them. It's the only time we've been in 2 wars in this country. And instead of paying for them, we took it on the tab that those people that were fighting the war and their children are going to pay off sometime in the future. Estimated just in Iraq alone to be some $3 trillion. We put prescription care into Medicare, which is not a bad idea, but instead of paying for it by negotiating with prescription drug companies, we fleeced the middle class and seniors by putting it on the cuff, borrowing some $800 billion, and leaving the seniors with a donut hole in the middle where they had to pay out of their pocket for substantial amounts of money. You know, we fleeced the middle class when we didn't regulate the banks so that they ran roughshod over our financial system and put a lot of people in jeopardy of losing their homes and certainly lost the value of their houses on that. And now we have my opponent, Mr. Tisei, and Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan. They want to pass a budget that would give $4.6 trillion more in tax cuts to people at the high end. And the way of paying for that is uncertain at best. They say, well, we might close some loopholes. Certainly we should close loopholes, but we should close ones that are going to make a difference, like the oil company loopholes. They made $137 billion last year. They used 40% of it to buy back their own stock, not to lower the price at the pump. And that is something that's wasteful money out there. We should close the loopholes that allow companies to take jobs overseas. The United States Chamber of Commerce is charging, like crazy to get people to be able to do that and not pay taxes on that money, costing all of our small businesses $2,100 a year more. They're getting fleeced on that. We need to make sure that we have a balanced approach to this. We have to make sure that instead of giving away $4.6 trillion more, we give everybody a tax break up until $250,000, continue that, save $1 trillion by not giving the special tax breaks for people at the higher end, close the loopholes that should be closed, look at the whole budget, including the Secretary of Defense's recommendation that it can be more efficient in the military budget, and we have already cut $1.2 trillion out of spending, and that has to be the pain that we take as well. But in a balanced way, we can take care of the deficit and build this country again.
Thank you, Congressman. Anything to say? 1 minute rebuttal, sir.
Well, I would just say, when it comes to tax policy, I agree with President Bill Clinton, who said that the worst thing that we could be doing at a time like this is to raise taxes on anyone. And I'm certainly not going to vote for any bill that raises taxes on small businesses in particular. And I would agree with the congressman, the problem in Washington right now is the whole place has been for sale for a long time. There have been 4,000 changes made to the tax code in the last 10 years. Most of those changes were made not because they were good policy, but because somebody had a good lobbyist in Washington. I was looking through the stimulus bill the other day that the congressman voted for. Do you know that there are all kinds of tax breaks in there? There was a tax break for NASCAR racetrack owners, that they got a special deal put in the stimulus bill. I looked through the Farm Bill. In the Farm Bill, there's a provision in the Farm Bill to give people who breed race horses a special tax cut. The problem in this country, again, is that what we have to do on both the corporate side and the personal income side is look at all these deductions, look at all these loopholes, try to tighten them up, and to provide tax relief for the
Sir, your time is up. But 1 minute rebuttal, sir.
Thanks. So, I'm sure you guys know about the Grover Norquist pledge. Nobody here has taken it. My personal reason for opposing it was because question number 2 says you would oppose eliminating all loopholes. I think that we can eliminate loopholes. I think that's a good idea. But I will absolutely commit to not raising the debt ceiling. It's going to be something that's different between me and the other 2 candidates. I'm not going to allow the debt ceiling to be raised. We almost stopped it last time. It can be done. The problem is that we don't have the political will to do it. The reason that we don't have the political will to do it is because right now we have a Congress that is built on corporate donations. I'm not taking any corporate donations in my campaign. I'm going there for your money. I'm going there to make sure that we don't increase taxes more than we have already done over the last several years. We can find a way to live within our means if we just say, geez, maybe we shouldn't spend more than we take in. Thank you.
Thank you. Congressman Tierney?
Thank you on that. I just want to correct Mr. Fishman for a second. We have this year all taken the pledge to not taking the Grover Norquist pledge. In 2010, my opponent, Mr. Tisei, and his running mate, Mr. Baker, both took the Grover Norquist pledge. It just wasn't convenient to run in this election, having taken it, if you're going to try to pretend that you're moderate on that basis. The other thing, we talked about who's for sale. Well, my opponent, Mr. Tisei, has taken $3 million in Tea Party, Republican National Extreme money on that basis, and then started parodying all of their positions. So I think that's the case there. He should follow Bill Clinton's advice. Bill Clinton allowed taxes to go up for people over $250,000. We created 23 million jobs, got a robust economy, and even the people that are paying a little more made more after taxes than they've ever made in their lives.
Thank you. Now it's time for Town Manager Andy Mailer to ask questions from the audience.
The question is, about 1.5 years ago, you identified through a comprehensive study of the tax code millions of savings. Could you tell us where any movement has occurred on addressing changes to the tax code? The question was originally addressed specifically to Congressman Tierney, but for the broader group of the question, I'll try to generalize the question. That there was a comprehensive study completed relative to the tax code, identifying millions of the savings, and could you tell us where any movement has occurred on addressing changes to the tax code?
Candidate Fishman, you may go first.
I got it. This is in my wheelhouse. I am in favor of the fair tax. I believe at this point in time we can absolutely eliminate all income tax. The fair tax is a 23% sales tax on everything. With that, you get rid of all payroll tax, you get rid of all Social Security, you get rid of everything. You don't have to worry about companies being able to buy their way out of income tax by changing the code. You don't have to worry about wealthy, powerful individuals being able to influence the income tax code. Nobody can get away from it. The fair tax comes with what we call a prebate. Every person gets $200 from the government as a prebate. So any taxes that they have to spend, they've got some allocation for. So if your basic gas, food, rent, etc., you will have received a prebate for that. However, if you're sort of the person who wants to go out and spend $500,000 on a car, it's now going to cost you $630,000 because there's a 23% tax on it. This is a good idea because it's not a tax that anybody can avoid. Right now, there are so many loopholes, and we all talk about eliminating loopholes. Let's eliminate the idea of loopholes. Let's not say, this loophole's going to go and this one's going to stay. Let's get rid of them all. Let's find a way to make a tax code that makes complete sense, that is simple. Right now, if you try to file your own taxes, the deductions that are available, you need computer software to do it. It shouldn't be like that. The basic idea of us giving money into the government so the government can give it back to us, it ought to be a simple thing. It ought to be a simple way that we can say, equitably, we can put money in, we can put taxes in place that everybody will pay their fair share. But we can also have a way that says, there's no way for anybody to dodge. There's no way that we have to worry about somebody not paying any taxes at all. There's no way that we have to worry about a company going overseas and sending jobs overseas so they can save money. All the money that they spend, they'll be taxed on. It's a fair system, fairtax.org. Please look it up. We can absolutely change it. 92 members in the House right now have said that they would support the fair tax. We don't need that many more people to get this really considered in our government.
Well, I'm thinking that the report that somebody mentioned in that question was the report that we did on tax expenditures, the so-called loopholes, the shorthand phrase of saying that. And what I did was I looked through the budget. I had the Center for American Progress and other groups look through it as well and identified 250 tax expenditures. Those are ways in which we give tax credits or deductions or special interest rates to people for various reasons, whether it's Mitt Romney's dancing horses. My opponent mentioned earlier, or whether it's race car drivers, or whether it's oil companies, still getting subsidies, even though the mature industries, as I said before, made $137 billion last year, and then did nothing about lowering the prices at the pump. They simply just bought back their own stock. Those types of things, whether it's corporations who actually get tax breaks for keeping money they earn overseas and not reinvesting it here, or getting jobs that they have incentives to take overseas. Look through those things. I picked just 28 in my bill. It's at least looked like good low-hanging fruit. That was $485 billion in just 5 years. Then I suggested in my bill that the General Accountability Office would look through the rest and examine them in terms of whether or not the policy reason for which they originally were put in place still existed and still made sense, or whether they would recommend that they be eliminated, or they'd recommend that they be changed in some nation or another, and then they would come back to Congress for consideration and debate. The problem that we have is whenever we spend money, we rightfully look at that every year and decide whether or not we want to make that expenditure. But in the tax code, these so-called tax expenditures, they don't get called up automatically every year. They're not reviewed, and they ought to be. So this is a way of bringing that forward, making us think about that way of spending tax money. Because every time you do that, make a tax expenditure, you are spending money. And you have to decide whether or not it's the right policy and the right priority that you want to put on it, and that's what the purpose of that report was and the bill that came out of it.
Thank you. Candidate Tisei.
Well, I would just ask the congressman, did the bill end up passing? And it didn't. And I want to just say that, if you have any Republican co-sponsors, did you reach across the aisle and try to build a
I
coalition?
couldn't find a Republican that wanted to cut a tax expenditure if my life depended on it.
Sorry, this is my time, but I would imagine, I would just say, you've been in Congress for 16 years. You're the only member.
The bill's been around for about 6 months.
You've been in Congress for 16 years. You're the only member of the Massachusetts Congressional Delegation who has never sponsored a bill that's been signed into law. And I think the reason why is because in Congress, in order to get things done, just like in the State House in Massachusetts, you have to be able to work with people. Hearing people you don't agree with on every issue. And I did that in the Massachusetts State House and State Senate. I got a lot of bills passed because, even though I was in the minority, because I understood that not everybody had the same viewpoint that I did, and that you had to go out. You can't vote with leadership 99% of the time and expect to get a lot of stuff done. I mean, you got to reach across the aisle, and that's the problem in Washington right now. You have a group of Democrats down there voting 99, 100% of the time with the leadership, and a group of Republicans who are doing the same exact thing. And the reason why this country is in so much trouble right now is because there aren't enough people who put America first, who put the interest of the country. When I was a state senator and Mitt Romney was the governor, I voted with him 54% of the time. I voted against him 46% of the time. I didn't do that on purpose, but when each individual bill came up, I would look at the bill and say to myself, what's best for the people in my district? What's best for the people of the state? And I'm not signing any pledges or doing anything like that. The only promise I'm going to make to the people of this district is when a piece of legislation comes up, I'm going to say what is best for the people in my district and what's best for America. And that's what we need in this country.
Tax code in the United States has become ridiculous. At this point in time, we know that there are loopholes that are specifically being pushed in by powerful individuals who have a friend in Congress. With the exception of you people in the room, I'm not friends with anybody in Congress who's going to put me in Congress. I'm not working for a corporation. Right now, a corporation is a good idea. It protects a businessman who wants to take a risk. If a businessman wants to take a risk, he incorporates. If the business goes south, he gets sued. He doesn't lose his house. In the beginning, the government created the corporation so the businesses could make money. The problem we have right now is that the corporations are creating government so the businesses can make money. We have to find a way to change that. Tax code right now is being used to benefit big corporations. It's being used to benefit powerful individuals, but it doesn't benefit us. If we eliminated the income tax entirely, fair tax, it is exactly that, fair for everybody.
Thank you. Congressman Tierney, 1 minute, sir.
Thank you. You know, Richard, if we did laws the way you think, that, everybody has to have it named after themselves to count, it would be sort of strange on that. We passed the Green Jobs Act, which I wrote, the Wartime Contracting Commission, which found $60 billion of waste. We passed a maintenance of effort to make states stay up with their aid to colleges on that. We passed low interest rates for student loans. We passed income-based repayment plans. We passed Pell Grant increases. Passed the medical loss ratio that makes insurance companies give a refund if they spend too much on overhead, which 140,000 families in Massachusetts have done. a number of substantial bills that I've worked on, that I've drafted, that I've worked with others and collaborated. And it's your group down there, Republicans, who only passed 61 bills. 1/4 of the bills that the Do-Nothing Congress Truman complained about passed. And when the Democrats were in the majority, and I was working with them and voting with them, 485 bills have passed. 70% were bipartisan bills. And 2 of those years, George Bush was president. So we know how to work together. We know how to get things done. But if you're going to go down there and that's what you would do and support the most partisan group of people who take no prisoners,
Sir,
can't pass the bills, that's not going to help this district.
Stand by what I said. Anybody in the audience can just go to C-SPAN Video Library, look it up, you'll see the congressman's 16-year record of not getting a piece of legislation passed. I mean, every other member of the congressional delegation has done that. And again, I think it really speaks to the fact that you need to be able to work with people and build coalitions and work across the aisle in order to get things accomplished in Washington, D.C. Congressman Tierney has been rated as one of the 20th most partisan, one of the most partisan members of the entire Congress. And you know, when you think, you know, when you don't understand that people, not everybody looks at the world the same way as you. You know, you have to get beyond that in order to be able to get things accomplished. And I'm really proud of the fact that, and again, being in the minority for 26 years in the legislature here, I was able to get a lot done. And I will say this, there are going to be a lot of decisions made in this country over the next couple of years in the Congress. And I think it's really important to have one member of the majority party representing this district in the state and bringing our concerns and being in the room when the decisions
Sir, your
are
time
made.
is up. Final closing statements. The candidates have drawn a number to see who goes first for the final closing statement. With that, candidate Fishman, please.
The number one question I get asked is why? Why did you run? Why in this brutal campaign would you stand on the side of the road with a sign, usually by yourself? You're not a millionaire. Why spend your own money on this? Why 6 months ago were you walking up to people with a clipboard saying, "Hi, my name is Dan Fishman. I need signatures to get on the ballot. I'm neither a Republican nor a Democrat." The number two question I get is, aren't you a little old to start in politics? I generally ignore that question. I am aware of the fact I have the worst hairline on the stage. But the reason that I'm running is because of you, my fellow citizens. I'm running because I believe that we can change government. Think about what it would mean if I won. Think about the change that that message sends. If you send these guys to Washington, it's a vote, but it's a vote for essentially the same government that we've had for the last 100 years. It's a vote for the same process. We can change this country. Massachusetts is the home of the Sons of Liberty. We can send a candidate who believes that liberty and individual liberty is our most important asset.
Sir, thank you. Candidate Tisei.
Thank you. And again, I'd like to thank the Chamber for having the debate today. We talked about a lot of different issues here, but I would suggest to the voters of this district that the biggest issue facing our country right now is the fact that our government in Washington has become dysfunctional and has become disconnected from the average person in this district. Hyperpartisanship. There are just too many people, as I mentioned earlier, putting party before people. We don't have enough independent-minded people down in Washington. Again, we're willing to put America first. And I want to say, our own congressman has become part of the problem down there. I mean, what will change if John Tierney is reelected? The food fight will, the vote from this district will be part of the food fight that will continue on. And I'm not even sure we have a vote from this district because he votes 99% of the time with the leadership. I mean, whose vote is it? Is it Nancy Pelosi's vote or is it the people of this district? The one promise that I want to make to the people of this district, again, is when issues come up, I'm going to look at every single issue individually and I'm going to try to do the best thing I can for the people of this district. I'm going to be a problem solver and I'm going to be an independent thinker. I want your vote November 6th. Let's start to make a change.
Thank you. Congressman Tierney.
Thank you very much, Scott. So I think we've seen here tonight what really is a very clear choice in this election. Mr. Tisei did not register as an independent. He's not running as an independent. He's running as a Republican. He's running as a Tea Party Republican because he's associated himself with that group of Republicans who now control the House. And there's no doubt about the fact that they are the most extreme and ideological group in 60 to 100 years. They are partisan, they're extreme, they only have 61 bills in the entire session that got signed into law. So if anybody thinks that his going down there is going to change that dynamic, then they haven't watched his ineffectiveness in the State House for all the 26 years he's been there. We need to make sure that we keep moving in the right direction. We need to have somebody who's pro-choice, who's for all equality, for access to health care for women, who will fight to protect Medicare, fight to protect Social Security, fight to protect education.